All right, guys, what's going on? Welcome back to the Everything College Football Podcast. Today, me and Nick here will be breaking down a big-time matchup in the Pac-12 between Washington and Oregon State. This one will be in Research Stadium, 7:30 p.m. Eastern Time on ABC from Corvallis. 64.5 is the total. 1-point line in favor of Washington. It's obviously going to be a tightly contested matchup. The Beavers have Washington and Oregon remaining, potentially trying to sneak their way into the playoff as a two-loss team. Looking at this Washington offense, Penix is looking to, regain some control. He has an elite deep ball, of course. This past week, though, against Utah, it wasn't the greatest of games for him, Nick. Certainly a lower completion percentage than we've typically seen. 57.1%, second lowest mark of the year. Still had 332 and 2 touchdowns. The wind was rampant out there in Seattle. But he had a lot of misfires as well. Where he's underthrowing or kind of overthrowing guys who are wide open. So that's certainly something Penix wants to try to not do 2 weeks in a row. 3,500 yards, 28 touchdowns, has 7 picks this year. And, 4 of those came, or really 5 of those have came in 4 of the last 5 contests. So he certainly wants to protect the football as well. And, this is a receiving game that's looking to get back. Jalen McMillan has not played much really at all this year. Only 6 games, has been beat up. But other guys have stepped up. Rome Odunze, of course, we expected him to be one of the nation's best receivers. 1,100 yards, 9 touchdowns. Jalen Polk has really stepped up. 943 and 8 touchdowns as a downfield streaker. Gurmy Bernard, 351 and a score. And then Jack Westover, that tight end, a guy we've talked about numerous times this year, is a nice, reliable guy who can make plays at the marker. 7 grabs, 64 yards, season highs in that category against Utah. He was a great safety blanket for him, Nick, and he's going to have to continue to do that going against the stingy Oregon State defense here. What do you make of this passing attack going on the road here?
This is a very talented passing attack here, obviously one of the nation's best. They put up a ton of points. They hit you hard through the air. Penix, obviously, involved in the Heisman race for a reason. The picks the last couple of weeks have certainly maybe put his stock down a little bit here. I think his stock is falling slightly due to a couple bad games with turnovers and struggling a little bit, but the numbers on him are still fantastic. 68% complete percentage, 3,500 yards passing, 28 scores, 7 interceptions. Great numbers. They got a balanced attack they can spread it out to. Obviously, Odunze is probably the best wide receiver in the nation, or one of the best, with 1,100 yards receiving and 9 scores for him. Jalen Polk's fantastic. Bernard's having a good season. McMillan, like you said, is also a very talented player. Westover, a good player. They get involved on offense as well. This passing attack is fantastic through the air. They throw the ball a ton, which I think is very good. The total offense on this team is fantastic. 5,000 yards total offense so far this season for them. They have good passing rhythm, right? They get comfortable. They also have a decent run game when they need to. Overall, this offense is fantastic. It's fun to watch. They score a lot of points, and they hit you through the air over and over throughout the game. And it's tough if your secondary is not ready.
Yeah, I talk about on the PowerPoint how some other guys have stepped up, Westover being one, aforementioned Gurmy Bernard as well, coming off his second best game of the season, 6 grabs for 63 yards. And then Dylan Johnson's really starting to get the rock moving. He had a monster game, 256 and 4 touchdowns against USC. That is the nation's worst defense, though. 84 rushing and a score against Stanford, and 104 and another score here against Utah. I mean, he's really picked up the pace the last couple of weeks, Nick. 20-plus carries over the last 2 games. Only one other game this year where he has 20 carries in. That was against Oregon. We also had 100 yards. This is not a team that likes to run the ball a whole lot. Only 26.8 carries per game. But over the last couple of weeks, they've started to, implement the run game a little bit more. And that's going to have to be the case, I think, as they continue the march forward, trying to get to the college football playoff. It's just a nice complementary piece, really, for this offense who loves to air it out. Dylan Johnson can continue to find the end zone and be efficient. I like what they have cooking.
Right now on the ground, they have 1,259 total yards on the ground, about 268 attempts, which, like I said, boils down to about 26.8 attempts per game, 22 scores on the ground. But the average per attempt is 4.7 yards per carry, which is a number that you would want to see a little bit higher. I know this is a air raid, pass-heavy offense, but like you said, getting that involved on the ground as you get closer in the season when you play tougher defenses is probably a good idea. Dylan Johnson leading the way. Will Nixon has a decent yards per carry as well, but he's not been entirely involved. 11 touchdowns on the ground for Johnson is a solid number. You want to see more on the ground from this offense. Can they find the balance here against an Oregon State defense that has been pretty good at points against the run throughout the season?
What I love most about this offense is the offensive line. Michael Penix doesn't always have a quick trigger, sometimes stands back and delivers downfield. You see that a lot in this offense. They just love the deep ball, and they're very good at doing so with their physical pass catchers and an accurate quarterback. But this offensive line, led by Troy Fatunu at left tackle and then right tackle, Roger Rosengarten. These guys have been phenomenal pass blockers all year long. The amount of times they drop back per contest, the way they're able to hold up, along with Parker Brailsford at center. He's been really good this season. I think this is a unit that can compete with anybody in the country with what they have up front, Nick, and I love the pockets they have. They have, clean air for days for Penix to drop back and deliver, and I think that's what makes this offense so good, and it doesn't get enough love, is these tackles and that amazing center as well.
They are certainly a fantastic duo and a fantastic offensive line overall. The tackles are great for this team. That allows Penix to have the time in the pocket to hit his guys, let them complete the route fully. When you have your quarterback fully comfortable in the pocket and be able to complete the passes when he needs to, it really is helpful for your offense. He can find his routes and let them fully develop and hit his targets when he needs to.
Looking at the Oregon State offense, DJ Uiagalelei coming over from Clemson has done wonders for this unit. They went from about 396 yards per game up to 453 this season. Obviously, allowing them to have more balance for this rushing attack that loves to grind it out. 58% comp rate for Uiagalelei, 2,200 yards, about 225 a game, 20 touchdowns, only 4 picks. He's done a good job of protecting the football. You've seen a lot of boneheaded decisions at Clemson, but here, for Oregon State, his completion percentage over the last couple of weeks hasn't been great by any means, but he only has 1 interception, or he has 4 interceptions on the year. Those came in 3 straight games in September, and he hasn't had one since the 29th of September against Utah. He's been protecting the football very well. This is a very good passing attack, I would say, in terms of rhythm across the middle with their speed. Anthony Gold, Cialis Bolden. We talked about in the preseason how they don't have much size really at all. Gold's only 172 pounds at 5'8". Bolden also only 5'8", weighing 157. So these guys don't have size at all, but they can really stretch you out, Nick. And that's what really makes this offense so dynamic, is because they love to run the football, old school type of approach of physicality, I formation. And then Jack Velling, the guy who does have some size, about 6'4", 240, 418 yards and 8 touchdowns, a red zone monster. Very nice complementary passing attack here from Oregon State. I love what they do on this side of the ball.
This is certainly a great passing attack. DJ has come out west and revived his career. I kind of felt like he wasn't the problem at Clemson, that he needed an opportunity to go someplace new where the lights were maybe not shining as bright, a little less pressure out there in Corvallis. He goes out west, and now has having a great season. It looks very solid, 58.6% completion percentage, 2,200 yards passing, 20 touchdowns, 4 interceptions, which is really solid for him. This passing attack is not a bad unit at all. They're pretty solid through the air. I like what they can do. The attempts completions is solid. Their passer rating is about 160 for this team right now. They have 2,500 yards through the air. The completion percentage is solid. It's not bad at all. It is good for this team that's scoring 37.9 points per game, which is a pretty solid number. They really do have a fantastic rushing attack as well, which I think is a really big key for this. We'll get to that in a second. But overall, this total offense is good. Yards per play, 6.98 yards per play. Solid numbers, solid metrics for this team. I do like what I see out of them. DJ looks comfortable. He's a decent wide receiving room to throw to. No one that's going to jump off the screen at you in terms of pure talent. Anthony Gold, Silas Bolden are solid players. Jack Veling as well. But no one that jumps off the page in terms of real talent. He's getting the job done with the pieces he has around him, and it's solid.
Yeah, 196 yards per game on the ground last year. That's exactly how many they have so far this year, but the efficiency's up significantly. 5.4 yards per carry. Damian Martinez has already eclipsed 1,000 yards with 7 touchdowns. Deshaun Fenwick, 500 yards and 5 touchdowns. Nice 1-2 punch there. And these are bigger, more physical backs. Again, this is an old school approach, Nick. You don't really see this much in CFB anymore, and you don't see it with success really at all. They had a couple of 200-yard games this season. They really churn it out on you, coming off 277 and 6 scores against Stanford. And this is an Oregon State team that's really ran up the scoreboard this year. 62 against Stanford, 52 against California. That 55 against an FCS school early on in the year. Had 35 in a loss to Washington State, where they almost put together a late comeback there. Conference play's been a little bit more tougher, but they've still been highly efficient, averaging over 4 yards per carry in every game since October. Certainly, Utah gave them a little bit of issues, but they're able to do enough to, hold off the Utes in that game. Again, this is a phenomenal rushing attack, Nick. A lot of physicality, not much speed, but this is going to be a tough test for Washington. They just played a tough Utah physical ground attack, and the Utes had their number at times, but, Oregon State, 36.5 attempts per game. They're going to look to bring it to you each and every play, and you got to be ready for it.
Certainly good numbers from the 36.5 attempts per game. A solid 5.39 yards per attempt, 1,969 total yards on the ground rushing. The numbers are fantastic. I think this is 2 great backs that can hit you back and forth. Martinez is really your star back there with the 1,000 yards rushing and the 7 scores. Well, Fenwick has 500 yards rushing and 5 scores. Solid numbers from both of them. DJ also has 6 rushing touchdowns on the ground. So I think this rushing attack is one of the best parts. And like you said, Washington struggled a little bit on the ground against Utah in terms of defense. And this Washington defense has seen some struggles. Oregon State has a whole nice blueprint to success there. If they want to have success against this Washington team, in my opinion, they got to just run the ball, jam it down their throats, trying to attack them on the ground, and let DJ be comfortable and create plays when he has to. I think there certainly is a recipe for success there if Oregon State wants to run the ball.
The biggest reason why this team has been so successful the last couple of years under Jonathan Smith is because the offensive line has just been phenomenal, led by right tackle Talise Fuaga. He's the best run blocker in the entire country. You look at other guys as well, like Joshua Gray at his tackle position, not as polished, as a pass blocker, but he's been a really good run blocker for them. Tanner Miller, Henry Bloomfield as well. Jake Levengood, he's been a phenomenal center for them when he's played. I know he's missed the last couple games. Not sure what his status will be, but regardless, they have guys that really stepped up on this side of the ball last couple of weeks, or last couple of years, that is. And again, it starts with that big beast for Fuaga at right tackle. Nick, they're going to look to run behind him a lot in this game.
This is a very solid physical offensive line unit that has some really solid, beefy pieces. They're very strong in the trenches out there in Corvallis. They have been building that. That's been one of the keys to success for this team is can you build in the trenches and dominate. This is a very physical offensive line that's creating good blocking lanes for their backs, as well as providing nice pass protection for DJ.
Now looking at that Washington defense, I certainly think they've been underperforming as of late. This is a defense I tried to defend early on in the season, but it seems like that's kind of drifting away. Certainly stepped up against Arizona State when their offense didn't score any touchdowns. And they've been, overall pretty solid, but the last couple of weeks has certainly been a disaster. And those teams up to about 23.5 points per game allowed. Numbers, much higher in conference play, 445 yards allowed per contest in conference play. It's certainly not a number you don't want to see. Against Stanford, they put up about 500 yards. USC was able to eclipse 500 yards as well. Made enough stops to win that shootout. And then against Utah, they gave up 28 points in that first half. They were losing in that contest. Shut them out in the second half, though, Nick. A lot of big passing plays really allowed the Utes to get things going. Held them to only 115 rushing, but there was a handful of plays in that game where you could certainly see the physicality was a part of Utah's offense that allowed them to thrive a little bit. And Washington did struggle with it, but overall they were able to shut it down. But as of late, the big passing plays have really just hurt this secondary. I think that's going to be the biggest story here for Oregon State because they can really bring their own physicality on the ground. They got guys that can burn you in terms of play action. This just seems like a very bad matchup for the Washington defense. You thought USC a couple weeks ago was a bad matchup. This one might be even worse with the balance they have and the ability to hurt you in play action with vertical stretch routes and the speed they have with the receiving group. Nick, I'm kind of concerned about the secondary coming into this game.
I am concerned about the secondary. This is certainly a unit that has struggled at points this season. This secondary is getting up to 2,696 yards through the air. They get picked apart. The total offense, they're giving up 5.65 yards per play. They give up 23.5 points per game. So there certainly is some concerns that this secondary could be a target to be picked apart here. They have some pieces that are questionable for me. Some guys that are not making great tackles and struggling to be there in coverage. They're getting beat in coverage pretty easily. They got beat against USC at times. They got beat in other games. This could be a tough matchup because this Washington State team, they could be able to convince you that they're going to run, to do play action, change it up a little bit, and really throw off your game. It could put the Huskies in some trouble here.
Yeah, some of these corners, I think they're solid pieces, but they've not been the greatest. Elijah Jackson, Jamar Muhammad has had his fair share of good plays, but a lot of bad ones as well. Dom Hampton, and he's been an average performer in coverage, leads the team in missed tackles. Like Michel Powell, though, he's really going to have to be a tone setter for them in the secondary. Again, just a lot of big plays the last couple of weeks have really hurt them. I don't think that's going to change here, but it certainly can. If you can slow down this run game, which I think they're certainly well equipped to do so, then you might be able to have a great chance. Tuli Latugazauna, he's a great run defender for them in the middle. Idufanu Ufashio, for years, has been a great linebacker for them. Has been able to finally stay fully healthy this year. He's been elite in all facets: run defense, tackling, coverage. He's been great for them. Carson Bruner as well. He's going to have to be tough. So they're really going to have to bring the physicality. This run game, I think they're going to crowd the box a little bit more. I think they have nice linebackers that can make plays in this game. Braylon Trice, a pass rusher that certainly has not been able to really produce, but he's one of the nation's best still in terms of pressures. He gets numerous amounts each week. Isn't exactly getting home, but I think that's something they're going to have to account for, is him off the edge, He can certainly be disruptive run defender as well. Zion Tupuola-Fatu, he's been, not the greatest. Of course, he came back from an injury last season, dealing with the sudden death of his father as well. So this is a guy that's going to be playing with a chip on his shoulder, a lot of heart with him, Nick. And I think that you're going to need all these guys to step up to limit this ground game.
I think you're going to have an opportunity to have a lot of these guys step up to complete this defense on the ground. Trice, for his part, 28 total tackles, 5 tackles for loss, 3 sacks. Need to see a little bit more out of him. Very talented piece, though. The secondary, they have some solid pieces. Misha Powell, 2 interceptions, 6 pass breakups, 27 total tackles. Elijah Jackson, 5 pass breakups, 40 total tackles. Dom Hampton, 3 pass breakups, 70 total tackles, leading the way for the team. Ofushano as well, 65 total tackles, 4.5 tackles for loss, 2 sacks. Good numbers out of him, but I need to see more out of him as well. This defense has been getting torched week after week. They're going to have to find a way to be strong here against an Oregon State offense that is no slouch.
Yeah, I certainly think this Washington defense can accomplish a lot more. This will be a big opportunity for them to prove that on the road. And again, Trice, he has, a numerous amount of hurries, 38 of them on the year, only 3 sacks though. So we need to see them get home a little bit more. And if they can at least get, I think, 3 sacks as a team in this game, they'll be in pretty good, situations. Because if you could put Oregon State behind the sticks, I think you're really going to like what you have. Because this is a passing attack that really seems to click off play action when the run game gets going. 3rd and 13s and whatnot. That's probably not going to be their strength going into this game. So overall, this is Washington defense has certainly over the last couple of weeks not been great. They need to limit the big plays and they got to stand tall here against the run. And I think overall it's been a solid run defense for them, even though USC had plenty of success. Stood tall a little bit against Utah in a game that certainly could have got out of hand for them. They're only given about 204 and 5 yards per carry to Oregon. I mean, it's a respectable amount, I would say. That's a really good ground attack for the Ducks. Looking at the Oregon State defense, coming into the season, we did not know what to expect from this side of the ball because they lost so much, especially in the secondary. And you look at the run defense, they've been very sound in their own right at times. It's been very hit or miss. They gave up 240 and 3 scores against Cal, 287 and 2 scores against UCLA. They won both of those games by double figures, though, Nick. And then other games against Arizona, 88 yards on 30 carries. That's a good ground attack. They held that to -7 for Colorado, and they just held Stanford in a blowout to only 82 and 57 for Utah, a team that, again, plays with plenty of physicality. So this overall, I'm going to mark it as a good run defense, Nick, even though they do have 2 of those outliers there, teams trying to play from behind that really tore them up. And, it really starts with guys like Andrew Chatfield finally stepping up from Florida. He transferred over. Last year was expected to be big for them. Didn't exactly fit the bill. But this year he's coming into his own. 9 TFL. Also has, 9 sacks. That's team highs there. I like what they have in Sione Laolia, 8.5 TFL. He's been a phenomenal run defender for them. Isaac Hodgins as well. I'm pretty sure he plays fullback for them as well. So this is a physical specimen they have on their defensive line. James Rawls has been nowhere near as good as he was a season ago when he was a big-time producer for them. But they overall have been able to establish some depth this year. Guys like Joe Gold, 6'5", 290. He's been a nice producer for them. And this defensive line's really impressed this year, Nick. We weren't sure what they were going to be able to do in terms of production, where they now lead the conference in sacks. I think they're tied with UCLA. And then, having this established depth, it's pretty impressive what Oregon State's been able to do on this side of the ball for Trent Bray.
This is a solid unit that's been very impressive as the season has gone on. I've been impressed what this defense has been able to do. Their holding teams, they're giving about 20 points per game. So their holding teams, that's a solid average for them. I like what those numbers say. They're also solid on the total defense. Opponents are averaging 3.29 yards per attempt on the ground. So they're definitely stuffing the run very quickly. They're solid overall, 5.12 yards per play of total offense. Against this defense, they have some physical players who are really solid. I like what they can do. Sound Lahola has 37 total tackles, 8.5 tackles for loss, 1.5 sacks. Andrew Chatfield, 9 sacks and 9 tackles for loss, 25 total tackles for him. So these guys are physical. They're getting in the backfield, getting a lot of sacks. Calvin Hart Jr., 6.5 tackles for loss, 3.5 sacks. John McCartan, 38 total tackles, 6.5 tackles for loss, 4.5 sacks. So like you said, a leading unit in terms of sacks. And they get in the backfield, they make the quarterback uncomfortable. This offensive line for Washington's been very solid, but if they can find a way to beat these guys on the defensive line and get in the backfield and make Penix uncomfortable, it could be a huge day for success for this Oregon State defensive line and defense as a total.
Yeah, Calvin Hart's been a big addition from them. The Illinois transfer, and then the leading tackle, Easton Macarnez Arnold, that linebacker. He had some big shoes to fill when Omar Spates departed, so that linebacking position certainly getting some good heat for him as well, even though Arnold has not been the greatest in coverage this season. Neither has Hart. It's certainly going to be a opportunity for guys like Westover to attack. But again, a defensive line that plays with plenty of energy Love what they're able to do from a physicality standpoint. And the secondary, Rajon Wright, Alex Austin, these guys departed a season ago at cornerback position. Jaden Robinson's been filling in pretty well this year. Ryan Cooper, a veteran, he's been an average playmaker for them. But I think mainly the safeties have been good. This is a secondary that really has not regressed as much. Really, the exact same numbers they were giving up last year is what they're giving up this season. So it's a much better unit we thought we would see from this side of the ball. Akil Arnold, Keaton Oladipo at safety. These guys have been terrific this year. This is a secondary that is certainly allowing more big plays than they were a season ago. But these two in the back here, they can really be tone setters in this game against the deep ball. And I think there's going to be opportunities for them to have a lot of success here, Nick. And that includes trying to steal a couple possessions.
I think this is certainly a secondary unit that is very solid as an opportunity, like you said, to get a few picks here. These guys are solid against the pass, and they have some solid players in the back in that team overall. Opponents, have a poor passer rating at times, 125.49 passer rating. Their Oregon State opponents have. They have a big physical ball hawking unit that can get picks when they need to. Multiple guys have 2 or 3 picks on this team. Alec Arnold has 2 picks, 6 pass breakups. Odie Lapo has 2 picks, 6 pass breakups himself as well. Chatfield, 2 picks, 2 pass breakups. Jeremiah McCoy, 2 picks, 5 pass breakups. So these are physical ball hawking DBs that win the battle downfield. And when you play against a team like Washington that is going to air it out, if you can get an interception or 2 and change the tide, that's a huge benefit for your defense.
Yeah, they had 12 interceptions last year. That's what they have this season. Held opponents to under 60% comp rate in back-to-back seasons, only giving up a couple more yards this year through the air. So it's certainly been a pretty good passing attack for them. They did not do very good on the road against Arizona State, or against Arizona, that is. They gave up a 78% comp rate, 275, 3 scores. They've been ball hawking, though. They just had 4 against Stanford. It's not going to be as easy here in this one, especially with the ability for Washington to win on the outside in man coverage. And these corners are going to be left on islands. Guys like Jaden Robinson, Jermod McCoy, Ryan Cooper, whenever he's not playing in the slot. These guys are going to be tasked with slowing down these receivers. They're going to have to win a lot of jump balls, closely contested, routes. So we'll see what happens. I certainly think they're not really built for that challenge in this game like they were a season ago. But I think across the middle of the field, they're feeling pretty confident. Looking at the tail of the tape, the team comparisons, quarterback, that's going to go to Penix. Running back position, I like what Dylan Johnson's been doing, but I think Fenwick and Martinez is just a phenomenal duo. Great build for what they want to do. At wide receiver, pretty unanimous there. The Washington Huskies will get that. I'm going to call it an even offensive line. Washington has phenomenal pass protection, while the run blocking for the Beavers is also amongst the nation's best. So you got to kind of pick and choose your battles on that one. But I'm going to take it as even. Defensive line, I like what Washington has, but I think Oregon State, they've, again, shocked with kind of the depth they've been able to establish there at that position, along with the run stopping. Linebacker, I'll give it to Washington there. And in the secondary, I'll go with the Beavers. Pretty even matchup here on the defensive side of the ball, Nick, but I think when it comes to offense, the Huskies have much more talent, and that might be the difference maker.
I agree with you. I think the talent on offense is just far superior. Obviously, the running back is going to go to Oregon State because Washington just doesn't really run the ball a whole lot. But when you have Penix, who is potentially your Heisman winner, plus O'Duns, who's an incredible wide receiver, and the other talented wide receivers they have in that room, you got to give the nod to Washington. I'm going to give the Washington offensive line the nod here. I think it's very close, but I am going to give that unit the nod. Defensively, I think that's a fair comparison, although Oregon State's linebacking unit could potentially get the nod. In my opinion, there are some seriously talented players who are hard-hitting, physical linebackers.
I think they're just a little bit more polished in coverage, so Huskies the edge there. Final thoughts on the prediction, keys to the game for Washington. You got to stay poised on the road. A lot in front of you. A win here. Apple Cup looming. You're pretty much going to be undefeated going into Vegas if you survive this one. Defense needs to be physical, though. For Oregon State, this play action could be nasty in this contest, so they can get their run game going. Got to play the deep ball well, and I think those safeties are going to be well equipped to do that. I'm scared for Washington, Nick. This seems like a game that's not a great matchup for them. I think if they're not good against the run, then they're just going to get torn up in the defense. And I think they do have some ball hawks that can really change this game for Oregon State. And, the defensive line, I'm confident in the Washington offensive front, but I certainly think they can make enough noise to steal some possessions. I could totally see Oregon State blowing Washington out in this game, but I think Kalen DeBoer is going to have these guys ready. I think they will be poised on the road. The maturity of Penix is going to be the difference maker here. 38-35, a close one for me, but I think the Beavers, this is going to be a really tough game. They're playing for a lot as well. Big-time contest. Probably not going to get a lot of love because it's out west and whatnot. But this is a massive game, Nick. This could really go either way.
If you're a Washington fan, this is where the rubber meets the road here, right? This is serious crunch time. You have to get results with the final portion of the season. Like you said, Apple Cup coming very soon, as well as potentially a trip to the Pac-12 title game for a spot in the cultural playoff. Washington wants to be back in the playoff for the first time in several years and be a rare Pac-12 squad in the playoffs. This is the best opportunity the Pac-12 has to send a team to the playoff in their last year. Oregon certainly has got that chance as well. This is a chance for Oregon State to shock a lot of people, make some great noise. Oregon State, if you're an Oregon State fan, this would probably feel pretty sweet to potentially push Washington out of the playoff hunt. They abandoned you. They abandoned Oregon State and their fans and left them behind as all these teams jumped to different conferences. If I'm an Oregon State fan, I want to win this game to prove that the Pac-12, final send-off party by making sure that it's tougher for the Pac-12 to send a team to the playoff. This is a tough matchup, certainly. On the road in Corvallis, Washington is certainly facing an uphill battle here. I am going to take the Huskies. I said 38-28, but I think it could be a lot closer than that. Like you said, I think it could be a 3-point game, and Oregon State could certainly go out and win this game. This is a toss-up. Two very talented teams with a lot to play for, especially Washington. This is a huge matchup. You got to watch this one if you're watching games on Saturday, 7:30 Eastern. A great matchup on ABC.
It might be a cold, rainy night in Corvallis as well. You don't want them under the weather in this one. Maybe if this was played a couple weeks ago, I'd pick Oregon State to win, even though the Washington defense the last couple weeks themselves has been showing that they're probably going to get dominated here. I just think, late November, this is crunch time. Like you said, for Washington, this is a must-have it. If you want to go win a national title, you got to win games like this, and I think they're well equipped to do it with the veterans they have on the offensive side of the ball and some of those guys on defense as well. So I think Washington will get the job done here. Can't wait for this one next. It's going to be a great one. Oregon State potentially trying to steal one into the, steal their way into the playoffs. That'd be certainly interesting to monitor. Washington, though, for now.
This is certainly an interesting game. I'm excited for this. Washington, they got to ride the hot hand here. They got to find a way to get the job done and keep pushing towards a playoff berth.
Make sure to like, comment, subscribe. See you next time.